Hey everyone, OutcastWriter here, wishing you happy Thanksgiving and hoping that all of you are having a great Thanksgiving week. Yeah, I took last week off. There were some things coming up and I just needed some time not to do videos, but I'm back doing a video, actually giving my thoughts, as you could probably tell from the title, on the new Pokemon game that has come out. And yes, I do realize that the title's a bit clickbaity, but it is legitimately the reasons why I will not purchase the game. But there are some things I want to talk about because the fact of the matter is Pokemon Sun and Moon, when it shipped out, Nintendo shipped out 10 million copies, which was the highest amount for any game on the Nintendo 3DS. I'm a Nintendo fan. I want them to do well, especially with all the people who are saying, oh, Nintendo's dead because they suck, just period, but especially because the Wii U didn't do well. So, I enjoy Nintendo and I want to see them be successful, so even if it's not a game I'm going to buy, there is something to talk about there. It's pretty awesome that there's that many people who are still interested in Pokemon. A lot of people attribute that to Pokemon Go, obviously, and from what I have been able to tell from people who played it and reviews that I've read is that it shakes things up enough to totally appeal to new players, and also it appeals to people who have been playing the series or haven't been playing the series but came back into it because of Pokemon Go. It's really interesting, all the things that they're saying. It's being very, very highly rated right now, so that is just awesome. I am going to kind of pat it on the back a little bit, but at the same time also express the reasons why I will not making this purchase, because this is a franchise that I do have familiarity with. I did make a video titled "What is the problem with Pokemon?" or I think it was "The Problem with Pokemon." I'll have the link in the comments down below. But yeah, so this is something that I've been familiar with. I grew up with Pokemon. So it's a franchise that interests me, that if someone mentions it, you'll automatically have my interest, even though it's not something that I actively participate in. I never even played Pokemon Go. Main reason is my phone wouldn't support it, but here I go. I'm rambling. So let's get into the game. First to remark, I can't believe it's been 20 years. That's honestly remarkable. I remember, granted, the franchise first came out in Japan, so I can't remember that because I didn't really know what was going on in Japan at the time. I was 6 years old in '96, so kind of a nice way to keep things in mind, being born in 1990. Nice and even number there. I remember Pokemon coming over. I loved the anime as a kid. I didn't have any of the original games, but I got in the second generation. It's awesome to see that this current game is doing so well. And the biggest shakeup is there are no gyms, which I find very interesting. Having read some articles, I kind of really get why they did it. It's not so much grinding and just going on to the next thing, which that's always been a big problem with me for Pokemon, is that, oh, well, it's just you go on to this next gym leader. They only have one type, so if you have a type that's super effective, it's going to be easy, and even if not, you just grind enough, and, you'll be able to beat them with anyone, and that's just Pokemon, woo. But it seems with these island challenges that they're doing, it switches things up a bit. People are talking about that this is the most developed world Game Freak has created in the Pokemon universe. So that makes me really excited that maybe they can do something with the old games, remakes, or just telling a new story. That's what I would really love, is not even a remake, but just tell a new story in these old areas that we've been to before, but give it kind of this Aloha treatment. So that's pretty cool. A lot of people have been talking about how great the animation is, and that's really interesting. One thing I remember a reviewer saying is that it makes it a little more interesting being taught how to catch Pokemon for the fifth time when it's portrayed in a different way. It's just not you mashing the A button with the one set screen and parsing through dialogue. So it's really neat. I know a lot of people were talking about that it's getting away a lot from the top-down view. So that's pretty awesome, making it more of an immersive experience, which is kind of something that we're hoping for. I know a lot of people are hoping for, because it is rumored that the expansion or just some other Pokemon game will be on the Nintendo Switch, and people are really hoping and chomping at the bit for an open world Nintendo Pokemon game. Don't know why I said Nintendo Pokemon, but hey, there it is. That's what you do when you do these things off the cuff. But anyways, so those things are all well and good, and it excites me in the direction that Game Freak is going, because to be perfectly honest, they've been needing to make these changes for a very, very, very long time. There still seem to be gimmicks, such as these new Z moves, which was kind of like this version of the Mega Evolutions, at least so I am told. I know some people are probably going to be insulted by the fact I called them a gimmick, but really it's, as opposed to the Mega Evolutions, which really kind of allowed certain weaker Pokemon to be used more competitively. That was the real reason for doing Mega Evolutions. You know, these Z moves, a lot of people are like, well, we don't know how they're going to be incorporated into the metagame, so you know, that's neat, but until they actually make the metagame more compelling, I won't really care about that, because you just have to do all this stupid grinding, just breeding stuff that takes a huge amount of time that I don't have. But in order for me to be able to have that battle of wits, I have to do all this breeding stuff. I don't have time for that. So that's a big reason right there that, you know, I'm not going to buy the game, because you know, it's just kind of the same things. If I wanted to get into competitive, which is why I bought Omega Ruby. No, I bought Alpha Sapphire, whatever. You know, I was wanting to be like, okay, I'm going to try to get back into Pokemon. I'm going to get my own Pokemon team, and we're going to try to do this competitively. And, you know, I played that game for 45 hours. And, you know, I tried doing the whole breeding thing, and I tried doing all the stuff that they were going through, and I noticed it wasn't really working out like they were saying it was. I'm like, if I'm supposed to be doing all the stuff that they're saying, I'm going to have to be putting hundreds of hours into this. I don't have that time, nor do I have the patience, and also it's not fun. So I know Game Freak has done a lot of things with like the after game and whatnot. So obviously those things need to be worked on. The main game, they've made a lot of changes. People still say that, a lot of people have said that this is actually the first real story in a Pokemon game, but I've also heard that it's really not all, it's not really a whole bunch of anything. So, you know, kind of what I expected. It's actually better than I expected. I thought it was just going to be the same boring, like, oh, well, we have a story, but it's not really a story, but, you know, the whole main game is to just catch Pokemon and battle them. But no, it seems to be more to that. There seems to be some actual world building going on beyond just catching Pokemon and battling gym leaders and trying to become champion and beat some evil organization and prevent some legendary from destroying the world or something like that. You know, just that wash and repeat routine that Game Freak has been going on for quite a few years. So I really appreciate that Game Freak is taking those steps, but until I get a real story, and I know there were some people who are complaining, oh, when's the last time Pokemon's become a JRPG? You know, I can understand that turning off some people. You don't want a JRPG per se, but there can be balance. You know, this is obviously Game Freak stepping in a new direction, but I think Pokemon really needs an actual story. And people talk about these offshoot games that were pretty good that had these stories, but they're not part of the main games. That's something the main games need. They need an actual story. If they can do that, you might have something pretty spectacular, especially with the Nintendo Switch and all the buzz that it's promoting. You know how many people love handhelds. I mean, the Nintendo DS, the 3DS sold over 50 million, and that was still considered in comparison to the DS, you know. So you have this Nintendo Switch, which is also a console, and now you're gonna have Pokemon on there. Whoa, you know, you need to start pushing things more. So I think this was kind of Game Freak's, you know, they were taking their step. They're taking their step towards things. So that's good. It's good to see them taking a step in the right direction. I knew that all the things that I outlined in my previous video weren't going to be accomplished or even, you know, partially accomplished, but these were the things that I saw that this is kind of the way you need to go if you want to keep growing. And especially so since this is something that has been going on 20 years, it's kind of like, wow, how has this thing kept going for 20 years? But obviously they have found something that strikes a chord amongst people of different cultures, which is pretty awesome. And while I do like this idea of these trials as opposed to gym battles, I don't want to see gym battles go away completely. I think a good mixture of the two is good. Basically, whatever brings out the world building more, just story building for the game, that's what Game Freak needs to do. One thing that a lot of people have been talking about, and I'm really surprised I haven't heard people complaining about it, is that now the moves that you use with your Pokemon are indicated whether they are super effective or not effective, which is a really interesting step in the right direction there. That was honestly something I didn't really think about. I think it kind of removes some of the mystery away a little bit and kind of makes things easy again, which is another problem that I have with Pokemon. It makes things easier for a game that really needs to be going in the other direction, needs to be getting harder. But it does clear up some confusion. So it's one of those things. Do you want to clear up the confusion of possibly, oh, I'm not quite sure. Especially, I'll admit, with like the fairy type, that kind of throws me. I'm not, I've had to do my research to be like, what, what's up with the fairy type and all that, and what's good against it, what's not. That's really thrown me for a loop. So maybe this is a cause and effect from introducing the fairy type that really just kind of shook things up quite a bit. So, I think it's a good way to kind of be like, hey, let's just not make a mistake here. Let's give you a little bit of help here. So, I can appreciate that. Also, I've heard some pretty good things of how they've shuffled things up with getting different types available early on in the game. As one review, I remember reading that it was quite refreshing as opposed to the bugs, rodents, and birds that we get early on for virtually every other mainline Pokemon game, with the exception of Sun and Moon happening right now, which is, when you think about it, kind of sad and pathetic. But yep, that's how it's been, and that's a big problem with Pokemon, is it's been extremely predictable. One thing that they did do that was in my previous video that I said had to be gone was the HM moves. They're finally gone! There is a hallelujah chorus or something going on here, because Pokemon fans all over the world are rejoicing that such idiotic, moronic, irksome gameplay mechanic, I guess is what you could call it, is finally gone. Never should have been in the first one. Definitely shouldn't have been in any of the other ones. But now, 20 years later, it's finally gone. HMs are gone. Pokemon can do things. Of course, there goes jokes. But hey, they can finally do things now that you would expect things to do. Like that Pokemon that, that you can actually sit on the back and it can go over the water. You don't have to teach it a move to do that. It does it inherently. So so I know I'm kind of giving GameFreak a bit of a hard time, but hey, you know what? Good job. Good on you for finally doing that. But for all the changes that GameFreak and Nintendo seem to have made to the Pokemon franchise, there's still one big thing that has not been touched on that needs to in order for the series to thrive. Now, of course, some of you may be saying, well, it's doing better than any other Pokemon game, at least launch-wise. You know what? You have a point there, and that's because things are done new and in a refreshing way. People are going to want that as well down the line. And one thing that we need to do, and I talked about this in my video, is that if you're going to continue doing the two versions of the games, you need a harder version and you need a easier version. Because one thing that I heard some people talk about is that they like the really kind of like over positive and cheery viewpoint of Pokemon. When I think about it, yeah, that is kind of a hallmark of Pokemon, and with how games are going, I think it is kind of needed. Do I want a more mature, kind of darker, grittier Pokemon story? I do, if I'm being honest, and that doesn't mean that we have to go full on dark and death and gluiness, but just a little something. I don't want to take away that cheer and happiness that is just kind of a part of a Pokemon. But it's time for Pokemon to grow up just a little bit. So that's why I talked about those two versions. We could have one that's the more cheery, easier version, which is something that the getting harder is something that needs to happen. It can't be optional. You would think that you could even like adjust the difficulty. Come on, Game Freak. This shouldn't be too hard. Either make two versions, one easier because you want to still have it approachable for kids and newcomers. I understand that's a part of Pokemon. You need that. But come on, give us a hard, more experienced Pokemon game that people who have been around longer can kind of really sink their teeth into and get challenged. I mean, come on. What would be more awesome than this, this fun, kind of cheery thing where you're catching all these fantastical creatures and you're battling, but the battles actually have a real challenge and you don't have to do things to limit yourself to actually make it a challenge for you. That's if anything, going back to the whole JRPG thing, if anything proves that Pokemon is not a JRPG, you don't really have to grind in Pokemon. You really don't. You can kind of just go uh, fast and furious through it, especially if you know which types are good against the others. They've gotten slightly better over time, but you can kind of just go through it. Don't really have to do any grinding at all. That's something that really needs to improve. I'm not saying that you need to do grinding, because grinding is no fun, really. You only kind of want it in certain amounts and certain kinds of grinding, but just make the AI a little more intelligent. That would go a long way. In spite of it all, in spite of my reservations, I am so happy for Game Freak and Nintendo that this seems to be doing super, super well. I wish them only the best. I hope it continues to be successful, and I hope Pokemon continues going in a way of upward progress. But despite all the good things that seem to be going on, it's still not enough for me to want to jump in and buy one. And, it's probably going to take some time for me to want to do that again. It's just that ship, unfortunately, has sailed for me again. It will return to port sometime. I don't know when. But, I'm not too anxious. I have other things to keep me entertained. But, just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on something that has been around, scarily enough, for most of my life. For more of my life than not. I only had 6 to 8 years where it wasn't around. So, yeah, just kind of reflecting a little bit upon that, too. It's really interesting just to see where it's gone. Anyways, those are my rambling thoughts and my reasons as to why I will not be purchasing Pokemon Sun and Moon. If you have and you've played it and you loved it, go ahead, comment, let me know. I want to know why you enjoy it. Hey, heck, give me a reason why I should buy it. Go ahead and leave me your most convincing argument. Agree with me. Do whatever it is you want. Make a suggestion of a video you would like me to do. I will have a review of Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb. I think that's what it's called. The third one, the newest one. Going to be doing a review of that. That should be coming out Thursday. Probably it's going to be a little more regular, that I'm only going to be doing one review a week. There was just certain times where it was getting really hard to do those 2 reviews, and I know I wasn't terribly consistent. Even with that, so I want to be consistent. I want to do that for you guys. I'll have 2 videos this week, so enjoy that while it lasts. And anyways, like I said again, have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. Have a blessed week. This is the OutcastWriter signing off, and remember, what we create matters.